Hey, folks.
Justin, is that the new office or just holiday location? You're on mute.
I've moved house. I live in the countryside now.
I was seeing all the pictures. I wasn't sure if it was just a holiday or not.
No,
Congratulations.
it feels like a holiday because it feels like I went away for Christmas, but but I haven't gone back yet.
Happy New Year's to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Brandon, do you have any new books back there?
I need to like mix them up sometime, find a new picture and like start shuffling around.
Does the ladder move or is it always right behind you?
It's always right behind me.
Okay.
Been tempted. I had the holiday hat out for a while. I should have like found a way to put that in the background. Santa hat.
Yeah, I you can do kind of amusing things using OBS, which lets you overlay images on your background and your images, so you can put transparent things in. It's quite amusing.
It's fun to do if you're going to spend the time for like a recording presentation. You know, it's going to take some effort, but I never feel like taking the effort for these little one-off hour meetings. I have had coworkers that show up.
I did put Bernie Sanders with mittens in my backdrop for a few weeks last year.
We have one of our guys on our team, Jason, who always has extremely creative ones like that between Bernie and Bill. And, you know, it's just, they're like right on the edge of, did you go too far? Or is it just, you know, it's just right, pretty funny.
One of my coworkers showed up in space upside down. He was from the top of the screen. with a space background.
Ugh. All right, let's see. I think Marina is the only one that we're probably missing that shows up regularly. I'm not sure if she's back yet. And Nate, I did see you posted something over the break that I hadn't had a chance. It's in my to-do list to go take a look at.
Thank you.
And did you switch roles, or did LinkedIn the LinkedIn notification just prompt me for a recent change you did?
I'm now, I'm no longer a contractor. I've actually been hired by the Linux
Oh.
Foundation. So I'm now.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Gainfully employed.
Always something good to have. Very cool. I actually didn't realize you were a contractor before, so that's great. When somebody you can't tell the lines between contractors just trying to do the to-do list versus, obviously passionately engaged. It's a good sign.
I appreciate that.
All right. While we're waiting for others, what we can do the quick one. Well, obviously, just do the sign-in thing. Paste the link. And the first one was just the Doodle Poll, so that those on us on West Coast may not have to be up so ridiculously early and can reach our goals of getting to the gym before going to work without having to put on a moonlight to get there. So you're muted, Justin.
You should just move to Italy.
Well, I have considered moving, but my partner, she's a nurse, and she actually physically goes in regularly.
I believe
so.
they have medical facilities in other places.
I've said the exact same thing. She's got a tenure she's working on at UW, but yes, we've had that exact conversation. So it is funny to hear. Okay, anyway, the Doodle Poll was the first thing. And we wanted to make sure that we could be more realistic and also account for people we know need to be here on a regular basis. It just so happens, if I look at it, at least everybody that's filled it out, and I'm pretty sure Shiwei can do this as well, is the 9 to 10 slot is got a clear 8 votes across the board, and I believe is
so 9 to 10 on 9 to 10 on which day?
on Thursday. Did you not? Oh, you didn't actually.
I
fill
haven't
it
filled
out.
it in yet. So
9 to 10 on Thursday.
That is quite a good time indeed. Yes.
It is.
I mean, yes, I have something tomorrow, but generally I don't have anything scheduled then.
Yeah, we won't schedule automatically for tomorrow, so we'll give you that out. Not that you show up regularly anyway, but we do always want to give you the opportunity to show up. All right, so if I'm trying to do the quick correlation here. Mark, I didn't see you fill it out, but it's Mark, Mahendra, are you, I guess, and Nate for that matter. Is Thursday 9 to 10 work for you guys?
It's even better than this.
Yeah, it works for me.
If that's 9 to 10 Pacific time, then yes, that's I think that's better.
All right, so
Wait.
Doodle Poll. Sorry, was somebody else saying something?
Yeah, just Samir. I didn't pick that slot up, but I guess I may have accidentally. But I'm all for it if everybody else works for it. I don't think so that slot worked for me. You said almost everybody's picked that slot, including me?
I
don't remember.
Why do I not want to?
I don't see you on the doodle.
I don't see you on the Doodle. Yeah.
Damn. Okay, that may explain.
You created the doodle, but you didn't fill it out.
I thought I did.
Does
Can
9
you
to 10
refresh? Can you refresh to see if just maybe I'm looking at an older copy? First of all, I want to make sure just on me, everybody else input is being seen there. If mine wasn't being seen, I was afraid that others may not be seen either. So
Oh, there's Samir. Okay. it's now 9. It did just reflect. I had 8 and now I see 9.
Okay.
Okay, so you are the only one that didn't vote for Thursday 9 to 10. Is that something you could adjust?
If Pritish and Milind can make it, then I think that will work fine.
Because they're supposed to be at another meeting that you're supposed to be at 9 to 10.
Yeah, I'm still in my learning curve, so there's a meeting I attend at that slot. But if Pritish and Milind can join, then I can moonlight and I can come sometimes. Did they? Let me go to the Doodle Poll myself. Where is that link? Let me see if they are coming. If they are coming, then we're all good.
Okay.
Yep, I see them selecting Thursday 9 to 10. Yep, I think we can, let's just lock in that time then. That's good for me.
Sounds good. All right. With that, we'll jump right in. That ticks off our first item. Pritesh, you have the rest of the agendas for. Sorry, I just noticed, Justin, you added another one.
Yeah, I just added it in just now.
Hang on, is Pritish here? I don't see him.
Shoot, he's not.
Let me ping him on the side. I guess this slot doesn't work for everybody for sure. 7 a.m. in the morning.
Maybe he thought we already went to 9 on Thursday. Or any other time than this. Did he have any 7 a.m. slots? No, he didn't pick any of the 7 a.m.
Yeah, let me call him. I have his number. Give me a minute. You guys, do you want to jump to a different agenda item while I try to raise him?
Well, he's actually got the first 3 items. Do we want to just start reading through them?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's read through it. Let's start with the first reading and then I'll get him. If
Trust
anything,
policy, scoping scenarios, because Brandon, this was one of the ones you were kind of focused on as well.
Yeah, if people have read, I can probably give a quick summary. If it's still reading, I can wait.
I'm almost done. I was gonna do the hand raising.
Okay, let's do the hand raising if you're done.
Yeah, I'm done. So. Wait, I was gonna clap. I was clapping at another call because I forgot the one hand versus the other. So, Mark, Nate, are you good? There you go. Okay. Samir, were you going with it?
Yeah, I was just trying to summarize I think the recommendation here, if you scroll all the way down, is we want to go with the longest prefix match when we are trying to evaluate the scope of a trust policy. That keeps things simple. It is a very common construct used in other scenarios as well. It does exposes some more work on people when they're configuring registry names, which have both a prefix and a suffix. But that is for them to handle with some automation or some more config. But the benefit of a longest prefix match is it's simpler to understand, and it doesn't require adding more concepts or more fields such as priority. So that is the recommendation for scoping to a registry name or to a path name, if you will.
So I threw a comment on there, but just kind of want to raise it here that a lot of the questions assume that we only want to apply one policy and that we don't want to apply any policy that matches. And so I just want to make sure that's something that people agree that that is what you want, and that we don't want to support the use case where someone says, this is my default policy for everything, and here's my specific policy for just my development registry. And if the development one doesn't work, but the default one does, do we still want to allow that or not? That's kind of the question that comes up.
Yeah, I think, Brendan, I didn't appreciate the comment as well in terms of why it's not called out here. I see multiple trust policies defined here, so you can have multiple trust policies here. So even for the same registry, you can have a longest prefix match where one part of the registry will have a different trustor, and a second part of the same registry, if you give a longer path name to it, will have a different trustor.
Yeah, I think where I'm going with that is if it matches both, if there are two policies that it would match each one, do you implicitly only want to check one policy against any one image you're verifying?
Oh,
because that's the whole reason you're prioritizing. If you don't care which one matches, then who cares what priority it is? You can match either one.
Got it. I don't have a good answer to that if it matches both, but the longest prefix will typically only match one, right? If it matches both. Okay, so you've specified the same policy or the same path under two different two different trustors. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying if you have two different trust policies in there, and those two different entries have different scopes, but one is more granular than the other. And so if you have one that is less granular and it matches and it succeeds, but the one that's more granular matches but doesn't succeed, it's not signed by whoever you're supposed to sign it by, is that still okay? And for, I think a lot of users, it might be okay. They might want to put out a generic thing that says, hey, anything that's been signed by my company's internal ID department, it's okay. I don't care whatever they say we're going to do. We might copy images from the corporate registry that has all this signed stuff into our development repo and just use that. But then we might also have other stuff in our development repo that we've signed internally that we're putting our signatures on, and we don't care which policy matches that.
I think I'm still confused. maybe we can take it offline, but what I was thinking here is if we specify a trust policy and we are going with the longest prefix match construct, then only one of them will match. And if somebody has configured the same path for two different trust policies, then that's an incorrect config.
Yeah, I'm not saying they would configure the same path. I'm saying they would have two different paths. And so they would have one that is more global. They would have the generic catch-all policy, like we're describing in some places. And so if you define that policy out there and say, okay, here's my catch-all policy and here's my policy for just the development repo, do they have to recreate all the settings in there from the catch-all policy into the development repo to get that to even work? Or can they just define a catch-all policy that just catches everything?
Like a default, so that I think I had it somewhere, if there's no team policy specific, as long as it's signed with the Acme Rockets key, is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, if they've got the generic, here's our company key and here's our internal team key, and they trust everything with the company key, they don't really care where that came from because they might be copying these images all around within the company. And they just trust it if it ever went past that high level security, but they also have their own key for stuff that's on their own registry. If they trust both and they get something that's only signed with one of the two, do we care about the priority? Because the priority implies that we only care if it matches, if it matched the one policy right there. And that would mean you'd have to take that whole catch-all policy and recreate it in every other policy you have for every other group. You'd have to copy that key over there for every one of those things. It's just extra work for the users.
I don't have a good answer to that. I'm still somewhat confused. I've still not grasped because if you are the longest prefix will match. So with the longest prefix, the more granular option will be matched. And if it matches the trust policy, it will be accepted. If it doesn't matches the longest prefix, then it will by default fall on to the next one after that.
So will it though? Because that's where I'm getting at. Do we even care about the priority in ordering? The only reason you'll care about the priority in ordering is if you don't fall through. If you do fall through, it doesn't matter what order you match these things in. You just check everything and whatever matches, matches.
Well, is it and or is it or?
So there is no ordering.
It's effectively an or. Brandon's suggesting it's an or, like any matching rule passes, it's okay. So you don't have to order by prefix length. You could just run down the rules and just,
yeah,
if it matches, does it fall into the policy? As soon as you get a yes, it's okay. If you reach the end of the rules, you're
I
it's
see.
a no.
Yeah, there's no need at all to look at priorities if you don't care which one matches.
I understand it. I'll have to discuss with Pritesh to come back. I don't have a good answer right now.
It certainly seems quite easy to understand for a user. Like that it's not, you don't have to sort them or anything. It's just as simply just a, does this rule match?
Did anybody say I
Does it
approve
pass?
kind of thing?
Yeah, does anybody, do any of these rules say it's okay?
But then
I
you
mean,
have
I think we did, because we did discuss, like, if people want more complex sets of rules, then they should probably define their own policy using some other tooling rather than we should be providing something that works for basic use cases.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's leave some feedback here. This call is recorded, so I'll definitely discuss with Pritesh after this.
The only piece that I have concerns around this one is the concept of the wildcards. Just always similar to the fall through stuff. It always leaves us, where you leave a hole because of something, squatting kind of scenarios. We know we have registry names, the actual root registry, the DNS part, that would change, whether it be a dev staging and prod registry or in the AWS case where the region name is in the, the login URL. Do we want to provide a way to do parameterization around that says, and I don't know if it should be, I don't know if I want to defer to environment variables versus a named element here, but to be able to say, for this, I was No, I'm sorry, I'm struggling a little bit because it's different between dev staging and prod registries as opposed to I'm bouncing between different regions, and it is the same dev registry or prod registry. That's okay. Sorry, I kind of talked myself into a corner there.
I'll also pull a couple comments out from in the pull request right now over on GitHub. Jason was commenting that if you don't have a trailing slash, does that get anything complicated when you do wildcards? And so there might need to be some comments in there about the trailing slash, whether or not you've got that. And kind of tacking onto that, I threw out there that how are you expanding these scopes? Are you using the normal reference expansion, which does the Docker Hub addition on any short names and puts things in the library and whatnot? You get some very difficult to sort out use cases if someone gives you a short string and you don't say everything must have Docker.io/library in front of it.
I don't know. I'm curious what you think, Justin. Like we went through this with tasks because we were ACR tasks. We were discussing defaults and some other stuff, and we basically said that for Docker, you had to put Docker.io on it. We wouldn't support an unnamed registry.
I think for wildcards, first of all, I think the wildcards need to be scoped to the section. So star just means start up to the next slash, i.e. it's for that piece of the URL and not just a textual regex.
Where are you looking? Because I'm looking at the one at the bottom of it where they're actually using the DNS name.
Yeah, I know, but the star can only mean potentially one or more DNS sections in that point.
So if I look at the very last one, it says US star. What you're saying is that wouldn't work. You would actually have to say.
Well, no, that'd be okay, but it would mean the star means within that dotted part of the DNS name.
Oh, I see. So you couldn't insert another dot in there, kind of thing.
Yes, for example, you couldn't put another dot in there. But we have to be very clear about defining those rules, because otherwise a star could let you have attacks by changing the name of the repository to end in amazonaws.com/something, for example, and then you're
exactly.
You're totally
if you just put if you put US dash and then I put a DNS / .amazon AWS, you're right, that I could totally squat on that. The whole SQL injection pattern is what scares me.
So I think it's kind of complicated from that point of view. I think that having Docker.io explicit also probably helps make it more explicit, but it might not matter. But I think that writing down what the rules are is precisely as important just from that point of view, because there are potential security issues.
It makes sense for clouds, everybody's got access to create something in Amazon AWS.com. And so that's the concern. You would trust everything under there. But for company registries, if you've got the example.co, a bunch of stuff sitting under there, you might not care that it is project A.team.B. whatever registry versus.
That's fine. I think there you're saying basically anything under example.com or acmerockets.com, registry.acmerockets.com, whatever /star is you basically saying anything that comes from that registry must be signed with this key.
At which point you're getting to do we need to have a star and a star? And the double star means expand everything.
It's prefix matching, so in fact you don't need trailing stars unless you want to define the number of things after the slash.
Well, what Brendan's saying is anything from the Acme Rockets registry. It doesn't matter what team.
If you want anything from the Acme Rockets registry, you can just put slash. You don't need any stars.
But teams may have their own registries within Acme Rockets, and so there might be multiple registry servers. They might not be different paths within the same registry server. Everybody's going to come up with a different use case. I think it's a complicated thing, but to your point, I think that's a really good point that especially when you're looking at clouds, people can put stuff anywhere. It just might be that we need two different levels of granularity. One is the single star that only matches a single path entry or a single DNS segment. And a star star like you would do on GitHub just expands more levels in there. Although I would say I don't think you want to pass the host name / repository name boundary with either of those.
No,
Right, it would
definitely
be,
not-
that's what I think
definitely
Justin's
not.
saying.
Yeah,
It's
that
either a
one has to be
DNS
a-
name or a namespace. And then the DNS name, it has to be a particular DNS segment. So you can't, basically a dot in a DNS segment is invalid.
For a single star. But I think there are going to be cases in there where people say that we're going to have multiple levels of registries within our organization, and everybody's got some DNS subgroup that they're within their team, and that there might be multiple levels in there. It gets complicated.
Can we, yeah, maybe if we can just type some of
They
those. as
can then
examples.
put star and star as separate rules or something.
Yeah, it gets ugly, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have an ugly setup, expect some complexity.
Ugly is ugly, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yeah. Could
I
express-
resemble that remark. Going back real quick though to the Docker.io expansion. If someone says they want to do registry colons, I'm trying to think of the wildcard in there, but just registry 5000, that could be a host name or that could be an image name. And so do we want to say that if you're saying registry 5000, you've got to put docker.io /library/registry
Yes.
tag 5000?
Basically,
us
there has
to
to be a
look at
valid DNS name on it, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody? I think some users are going to look at it and not realize that /library is a path that's on Docker Hub. And so we might get some confused users.
Well, but what you
I
would
think-
see
I
is
think from-
docker.io /library. So you would actually see a domain name with
I think
library.
I think when you've got wildcards, you have to spell it out in full, because otherwise, what does star mean on its own and things like that? Like it's like, does star mean all the Docker official images? That seems really non-intuitive. I think so. I think you're going to have to spell it out.
Yeah, I think you do. But we're going to want to document that clearly because most users don't know that when they're writing image names. We've gotten them so used to the short names over all these years.
Yeah, but their throttling thing in the way we're all the clouds are mitigating that or kind of forcing that back. So basically, you do need to specify a name. Because this is where I was, I'm really happy that the AWS team took the brunt of this up front and said, it implemented their cache before we had a chance to do it, because they basically said, look, you need to change your registry name. And
you're seeing it in the clouds. I don't see it as individual users that are putting up, okay, here's our project we're just going to spin up in our local Kubernetes cluster. They don't see that yet.
But what are they using in that case?
They'll just point straight to Docker Hub, but they'll authenticate.
Yeah, they're going to have failures in other places.
I mean, that leads to the other question of, should we be supporting rules that are not based on paths? So, for example, the Red Hat Simple Signing has signs a path inside the image metadata. Actually, I'm not sure how widely this feature is actually used, but in principle, it assigns a path inside the image metadata. So if you trust the signature at all, you can check the signature, and if it matches the signature, you can then check whether the path inside the image is one you trust that signature for. So it reverses the check. And that
kind
would, for
of
example,
locks you to a path that kind of defeats the.
No, but the path on the inside can be a canonical location. It's not the location you pulled it from. So you can get a Docker official image, check it with a signature for Docker official images, and if it says inside this is a Docker official image, then you can trust that it's what it says. So it reverses the order of the checks. And lets you pull something from anywhere and check trust for it in principle,
So there might
assuming
be-
again, I mean, it basically reverses the checks, and the image has to obviously have committed to that metadata of what it is.
Can that be something where we put conditions on annotations or maybe labels, something like that on the manifest that we're signing? And so you would look and see, okay, this image that we're signing has this certain label attached to it, and we only want to approve, this policy only applies to images with that label. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, it needs to be in the signed data,
Mhm.
because
We'd have
it's
to pull that up.
yeah. So you need to pull it up. So it can be in some piece of signed data. In my proposal later on, I've got some notes on that, but that's a separate issue. But yeah, in principle, you can. Yeah, you have the annotation somewhere in the signed content that says what it is, and so you reverse the checks.
It triggers
signature
a
first.
it triggers a similar request, and so maybe these can both be solved the same way. But I've heard a request where we're going to sign image. We're also going to sign other what's the attestations on that image. So SBOMs, attestations, other kinds of things that have been pushed up alongside our image in the same repository. And so you can't really do a wildcard at that point because you've gone all the way down to the repository level. But they want to have different trust for the attestation from the security team that says this was a secure image that we approved and everything else than from the image itself. And so there can be two different signers.
SBOMs must be signed with one key, but the image must be signed with a different key.
Along those lines. And so you would have maybe some metadata on the signature that says this is an SBOM that I've signed. And so then your policy could say, if I see one of my signatures with this metadata on it that says it's an SBOM, I need to only use this one key for trusting that.
Is that more related to your signing by the artifact type?
I think this use case is, but it might be able to be a little bit more generic with kind of thinking to Justin's request of putting in some kind of other bit of metadata that the original signer has.
So what? Yeah. So
Samir.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. One other thing to discuss, I think we're adding more things to add in trust policy will be we ever see a mixed environment that we'll have signed images and unsigned images? So back to your point about Brendan saying, if we all fall through and either one of those things applies, it's good. But what about scenarios where we have unsigned images being pulled into microservices as well? Do we need to support that use case, or once you go signed images, every image has to be signed?
I think
You're basically saying,
Yeah,
well,
I was thinking about this over Christmas about how, because effectively it's about how you introduce signing in a world where things are not signed.
Yep.
But the problem is if your policy says that some unsigned images are okay, then you might as well not check signatures at all.
yeah.
I mean, but we do actually need some kind of incremental policy. So I think that a location that you pull from that is allowed to be unsigned is probably a good start, but no kind of wild card. If you have a wild card saying unsigned is okay, it's basically pointless because you might as well just let everything through and not check the signatures. So I think it would need to be like, I haven't implemented signing in my Artifactory registry yet, but I've started doing it in my ECR registry, for example. And so let anything through from Artifactory for now, because I haven't finished setting up signing policies, or maybe let everything through and like limit me to only this repo or something. But it's questionable whether this is the right tool to do that incremental thing or not. But I do think it is an issue about like how do we incrementally
How do you make that first step?
Yep.
I was actually thinking, and this is one of the first comments I put in, was not the source, but the destination. How do I secure a particular, and it depends on the service. Obviously, the world is more than just Kubernetes, but do I, on a service specific scope, so we'll use Kubernetes, for example, of a namespace, that says the system namespace needs to be signed with this, namespace 1 needs to be signed with this one, namespace 2 needs to be signed with a different one, regardless of what registry it came from. Because we've kind of been seeing more of multiple teams sharing a cluster, because that part of what you're trying to do is amortize the cost of a cluster across lots of resources. So would you apply no keys are required for this namespace, but they're moving to keys must be required, signing keys must be required, so they move to namespace 2, and nothing can go in namespace 2 unless it's signed with a certain set of keys. So it becomes less of the registry as opposed to more the destination. What do you think?
I mean, I think that yes, but it's kind of that's kind of also so, but that's more like don't apply these policies globally so that your cluster apply them to the namespace.
Right.
Kind of
Some
thing,
kind of
rather than-
scoping
rather
based
than
on
the
type of
policy
service.
knowing about that. Just apply the policy to this namespace and apply a different policy to a different namespace, probably.
There's also a different tier. Like we're looking at all the, how do we validate this stuff comes through the trust policy? Yes or no is kind of our answer. We're going to have an A or B answer to this. I think there's going to be a tool that is running this policy that is going to be configured with warn, log, or actually hard fail. And so users will be able to set that however they feel appropriate. Because I think the first thing users are going to want to do is turn on a warning. Let's see all the stuff that flags up and don't actually hard fail and everything, because you don't want to break your production cluster.
That's actually what I was thinking. That might apply well to what you're saying, Justin, is because we were talking about this also, is as we start putting this into, like, we want to be able to tell customers, use this in production. Don't block on it in production, because if the key validation fails for some reason, or there's something, we don't want your production workload to go down, but absolutely start putting this in a production workload and maybe start warning or logging a key failure so that you can start to get a feel for that experience. And maybe that's what you do, is say, look, it should be this key, but if you don't have a key, it's, you know, it fails with a warning, and you keep on scrubbing that list until you see, well, I'm not getting any more warnings anymore, so now I can enforce signing. Because I kind of see what you're saying. I don't know if any, especially because we support multiple, well, it's not really multiple keys, but let's just say that, you know, because we support multiple signing keys or multiple signatures on an artifact, you could, it doesn't have to come from Docker or JFrog or anything with a signature. You can promote it into registry B, not rebuild the image, and just attach a signature to it. And now say, look, I didn't rebuild this, but anything that came from Docker IO library, I add the Acme key, and now as the fallback, it has to be at least signed with the Acme key, and I don't have to support unsigned images at all. Doesn't really solve the problem. I'm still pulling from Docker Hub, but I think is the best practice. We're saying you shouldn't, if you're going to go to the security of adding signing verification, you should have your images come from a registry you own, whether it be a private one in your cluster or one in your cloud or whatever. So you would have that ability to add your signature to it. So actually, where does that come in here? Where we say policy, do we need a warn fail?
Yeah, that is in the other document where we talk about trust store and trust policies. So on the scoping, we concluded or discussed that using wildcards with restricted to within dots or within slashes is an avenue to explore and see if there are any gotchas there. Is that, if I go back to the scoping discussion here, we are saying because each registry could people have different naming conventions, prefix and suffix, or one or both even. But using stars is okay, but limit the star to within dots or within slashes. Is that a good conclusion from the scoping wildcarding?
I think we need to have a detailed scope document of how it should work, but yeah, something along those lines.
Okay.
Because I think it needs to be written down precisely what the
Yep.
wildcards mean.
I mean, look, we do great when we get good enough, we start using it and we see what we like. So I think we've gotten close enough. Let's get this codified, start using it, and see what else we need. And take the incremental approach. And maybe, and to the point is like, let's not add too much, less is more. And when we find we're blocked, we need to add the next level. We can add that as well.
Yep.
Sorry, is that you, Brandon? I'm stepping up.
Yeah, Mark, HackMD seems to be acting funny when two people are typing today. So
I was trying to fix the funky spacing, so I'll stop typing there. Okay. Trust anchor in trust policy. Do we want to go to that one? We have 13 minutes left, so we probably have good for one more. Anybody have a reason to jump to a different one? Just go in order. Well, actually, so let me take the trust policy scoping series. Can we convert that to a PR? Is that what we're saying is the next steps?
I think scoping was a PR. It was linked up top, wasn't it?
Trust policy scoping.
Yeah, there is a PR, but for this
is related PR. So can we update the PR to reflect what's in this doc? That's what I'm saying.
Well, Pritish is not here. I need to touch base with him. I don't think so. We concluded on the next step. So if there is the next step here saying, let's go with the proposed longest prefix match for now, and we can defer and we're not worry about wildcarding for this first initial release or the next alpha. And then after the next alpha, we can come back and see if wildcarding is necessary for more.
Well, I think the wildcarding does make, especially in the DNS name, the regionalize, the AWS using regions in the DNS name was the thing that you heard me kind of trip over myself. At first, I was thinking the dev staging prod, and you just put a parameter in there that basically separates the registry name. But the fact is that you want to be able to support load balancing across multiple regions, and you shouldn't have to, and maybe that is a better answer. That
but I mean, you're already going to be tooling. You're already going to have tooling for putting region names into config files, because it's like everything you do requires regions in there, and you normally parameterize all your config files by region anyway, and so you may well have tooling that you could parameterize this by region name. So I'm not sure that it's necessary for a V0.
What are you saying, that you just create separate trust policies that have, sorry, what is this? This is, a separate trust policy that puts a scope that they basically, if they have 3 regions, they put 3 scopes, and it all points to the same,
Same policy, yeah.
Trust store.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, so I know what the next step there. I'll work with Pritish to go with that. While we'll keep thinking about wildcarding and some of the other discussions which came up today regarding signed and unsigned. How do we want to go forward with that? Okay. hey, because Pritesh is not here, and what if we skip and do the review signing inline, Justin? What you have? I'm just proposing, so he doesn't miss us out.
I mean, I just wanted people to look at it, but maybe we discuss it next week. But for background, I was thinking about proposals for doing inline signing rather than references. I know that hasn't been a priority, but it does simplify a bunch of use cases. And other systems like Git have got away with only inline signing for a long time. So it's basically a proposal for how to sign a descriptor inline using annotations. I've iterated on it a few times. It doesn't yet have support for how to reference SBOMs, which I do want to add. But essentially, it adds annotations. The example uses SSH signatures just as a convenience, but any type of signature would work. But basically uses annotations to store the signature data, what was signed, which is the JSON version of the descriptor that was signed, and the signature, and then any other fields your signature format needs, and then it basically will go back and you can either use it to validate the descriptor that's in the image you get, or you can just use the signed descriptor and parse that as your descriptor. It just uses annotation, so it's very straightforward and compatible with any image or any other format that supports it. And it just signs OCI descriptors, so it's very straightforward implementation and to use. It's only it's like a very small piece of code doing this. I'd be happy to discuss this more, but I think people might need time to go and take a look. There are a bunch of use cases where inline signatures are really useful. Like, for example, we would like to inline sign Docker official images, so the signatures just always go with them wherever you get them from. That comes back to like, how do you we'd like people to verify Docker official images anywhere, and they might want to add signatures via references or something, but we would like to just ship them with signatures that travel with them wherever they are, because they're already ending up in lots of places like Amazon and people's private repos. And so if people have rules for Docker official image, for checking Docker official image signatures, then it's a very straightforward thing that they can write a rule for that however they've got these or wherever they've put them.
Yeah, so this is one of the handful of backward compatible solutions for registries today. So
it's backwards compatible, but I think even if you have references, it's still potentially useful for some cases where you just definitely always want the signature to be carried around.
I mean, it's nice that the image owner has the ability to put their signature in line, right? And that's like, wherever it goes, if it's in that manifest, it's always there, and there's no way to remove it. It's not to say you can't attach it. It still meets the Trojan horse mitigation goal, because I still have to pull the manifest, but the manifest doesn't have any binary data. So I pull the manifest, I verify the signature. If I don't like the signature, then I never pulled the blobs. So I never got the binaries onto the machine. So it meets that goal. The only downside is that there's just at least two paths, if not three, right? It looks for the signature in the manifest, it looks for a reference signature, and it might have to look for a fallback signature too. So user doesn't need to do anything. It's all up to the few people that write the code and the notation CLI. So I don't see a downside per se. The downside doesn't affect the users.
Yeah, and the signature, when you get a signature, you treat it the same way. So it doesn't matter like where you get it from. So it's just effectively it's an extra extra code path to for how you might get the signature.
And how will this scheme support multiple signatures? Like we just append.
It's not planned to support multiple signatures. I looked at it, it's kind of too complicated. If you look at something like Get Inline Signatures only support single signature.
Okay.
I think it adds a lot of complexity to support multiple signatures, and then you have to have a semantics for them as well, which is also confusing. In one sense, it does support multiple signatures if you have one manifest that's signed pointing at another manifest that's signed, which you could interpret as they both have to pass, but that's kind of it. I wasn't intending, like, it was literally intended
It's not the core use case. is what
Okay.
you're saying.
it was intended to cover the simplest use case of one signature that's added at origination time, or usually origination time, probably by the original author who wants it to always be carried, not for kind of any other signatures an organization might add later or anything like that. So I mean, for use cases like origination with Docker official images, for example, or Microsoft publishing content as the first author.
Yeah,
I think
you're special. You get this squatting
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
I mean, so yes, I think I like it. The interesting question it starts to tease out is if we want to support signatures in the annotations, as long as it's not like multiple gigabytes, because we continue to have this conversation about how big
They are small. I mean,
no, agree.
like
I was going to a different place. Like, so
Yeah.
that if we can put the signatures as in the manifest directly, do we need to store them in blobs? So when you are doing the additional signatures, and let's say you're using the ORAS artifact manifest, the reference types could also put as an annotation. So if I have 3 more signatures, it's basically just a manifest with annotations. And if you look at the ORAS artifact
Yeah.
manifest said that blobs aren't required.
Yeah,
So-
I tend to, because when I started this, I was going to put the signatures as blobs, and then I decided it was too horrendously complicated. It was
Yeah.
much easier to inline everything in annotations. So I kind of iterated that. My first iteration was trying to store them as blobs, and it's like they're small, it's much easier, it's less work for the client, it's less code,
Yep.
it's easier to understand, it's easier to debug because you can just do you just look at the manifest and all the stuff's there, and you might need a tool that interprets the data for you a little bit, but apart from that, it's pretty easy to understand what's going on. So yeah, I tend to think that blobs is overkill for signatures, but there is this. I mean, there are some complaints. I mean, part of the reason I put the JSON object that was signed in there because of the complexities of signing JSON, and that is potentially more of a, which is why I wanted to, but also why I specifically wanted to sign
Actually, how do you do that? Didn't you just create a circuit? Like, how do you create?
no, because it signs the descriptor JSON, so it's all descriptor based. So it
Which
purely signs.
descriptor?
This is creating an index, and the index
Oh,
contains all of
that's-
your
that-
manifest, and
oh,
the
that's where you-
signature in the
shit.
index is for all the
Shit.
individual manifests.
Shit. I forgot about that. I remember you showed this before. So you actually are requiring a separate, the Alpine image actually has 2 manifests. It has the
Well, it
index.
always-
and it has-
No, because I just
It's a multi-platform already.
Yeah, it's multi-platform already, so I just
Okay.
use the one that's already. I assume that your image is either multi-platform or you have to create a dummy index, which with just the single platform in. But most images, I mean, most most images that apply to are probably multi-platform anyway.
I think it was Tnon was, I don't want to get into the multi-arc index thing, because that's just a whole other rat's nest that's somewhat irrelevant. I mean, look, the other argument is to go down that rabbit hole is basically no difference that we're saying a signature as a reference type is another manifest. So whether
But
it's
the
an
other,
index,
actually, the other thing is you can use this format as a reference. That's the other thing that occurred to me over Christmas. Like, so you could, because it's just an index, you can just put it somewhere else and use exactly the same format because it's just
as long
an
as you're not
index.
tagging it, because this is the problem with some of the other implementations is if you
But
want
you
multiple
can
signatures,
literally use this index as a reference.
so you do it the reverse way. So it's not like you're starting with the index, you actually start with the. So the question is, how do you do multiples? So if I have to make the index mutable, then I start getting into these racy conditions. So, but if you have multiple indexes that are found for the Alpine image, then it follows the similar pattern to the ref types.
Yes, so you don't so I'm assuming that so it doesn't have the mutability issues because it's only created at image creation time. But but effectively you could use something that's basically something that's the same as a reference because it does.
Right.
I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're saying there, Justin. You're saying you can use the image as a reference, or are you saying that you can just make the thing you're tagging this OCI index? Or am I misunderstanding?
You could, if you're using something like if you're using a tag to find the signature, you could just simply put this object there. If you're using a reference type, effectively, it's still got all the same information you need to find the image because it's got a descriptor. It's got the descriptors, assigned descriptors in it. So it's basically got all the information you need to find the objects in it.
And basically, an index doesn't have blobs, so you're fine to be able to push multiple indexes that are associated with the Alpine image manifest, not the index. So it can work in both directions.
To work in the other direction, though, you need to know where to go pull this index.
Yes.
And so it needs to be a well-known tag.
You either need a reference API that tells you, or a tagging convention that tells you.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have a tagging convention that tells you, it's actually very straightforward because you literally just go to that tag instead, and then it's just an index, which then you can check just as if you've gone there straight away. If you have a reference API, effectively the same thing. It can tell you where to go, and you can go and then just treat it as an image index, and you've just got an image index, so you don't need to process it any differently from a normal image index once you found it.
The concept works in both directions is basically you're good. And there's still the multi thing that you have to figure out. Okay, we're over, so that's why I'm kind of trying to put a close so we can. Nate had a drop off, and I think I saw somebody else drop. Justin, you have this as a committed PR. How did you want to take feedback?
So I've got it as a separate repo.
But where does it, like a PR, like how can we put comments on it to?
Open issues or
that's fair.
open PRs or anything. I mean, like it's just an experiment. I'm going to probably look at SBOMs because I want to do a static SBOM format as well. Because
it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, that's part of the thing is once you've got a pointer to it, it doesn't matter what it points.
Well, no, but it's at the moment it's just a signature, not a pointer, so to speak.
Well, it's a signature that has a pointer to something, doesn't it?
Right. Yes, it is a signature with a descriptor. Anyway, I just wanted to write down what's to do with
Okay.
it. But anyway, I've iterated a few times on it, and if anyone else wants to iterate on it and change it or add different things in it.
All right. So I'll work with Amy to get the calendar updated. So 9 a.m. next Thursday. We'll pick up from there. And we'll speak to everybody later. Thanks, folks.